Be seated. As I mentioned, the Stooks are serving at CMA in the DR. Now, just out of curiosity, I know we've had a couple missions trips. I know Mark and Linda have been there. How many have been to the campus there at CMA? Just put your hand up so they can see that they're amongst friends. So, all right, most of them are friendly, so you'll be good. Even those that haven't been there, they've given toward it and prayed for it. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrew, and he's going to take care of the rest of the family, their involvement, and we'll just turn it over to him. We're so grateful to have him. Let's give him a hand as he comes up.
Well, good morning, everyone. Is this, hello, 1, 2. I hate microphones. My students will tell you that I'm enough of a loudmouth that I don't need one, but... So yes, we are the Stook family, and it has been a joy to serve at CMA for almost the last 7 years. And you can see kind of the progression. Back in 2014, we had kind of a whirlwind call. We went thinking that we knew what God wanted for us in our lives, and then all of a sudden 6 weeks later we were landing in the DR with our whole world turned upside down. And we're still there, which goes to show that we're crazy. But it's been a joy just watching, if you can see our family slowly growing up during that time, and just the amazing lessons we've learned. And actually, since we've been here multiple times now, because you guys have been partnering with us since almost the beginning, most of you have heard our stories before. We just wanted to give you a quick update. Next slide. The last year, with COVID, two main things happened for our family. One is that we actually moved. So that apartment that most of you had visited, we've now actually moved to the house up the hill a little ways. Another family left, and we now actually have the best view on campus. Unfortunately, this picture doesn't quite do it justice. But it's also a larger house for our growing family. But the true joy of it, next picture, the other big life change for us this last year was that we pulled our kids out of the out of the school that they were at in town, and my wife started homeschooling them, which she's always been a natural teacher. I always say that my wife is a better teacher than I am. I have the training, she has the natural instincts. Which also, she's a better preacher than I am, but I can never get her up here. But it's been a joy watching our kids flourish under her instruction. And part of her natural teaching, she doesn't just teach our kids, she also teaches the campus kids. So it's been kind of a rough year, what with COVID and with all the stresses involved with that. But one thing that my wife has been trying to do consistently is teaching the campus kids Sunday school. She's always like, Andrew, you spend all your time working with the teenagers, and like everybody else here is focused on the teenagers. Well, somebody needs to be focusing on our campus kids. And so part of her ministry is just pouring into the various staff kids on campus. And this last year, she's been doing a series of Bible detectives where the kids fill out, basically they have like these case files where they go through the Bible and they explore. It's really fun. At least the kids seem to think so. But another thing that they do is she helps them memorize fairly large chunks of the Bible by making up songs and having them sing them. So I'd love to invite my kids up now. Hopefully the youngest one won't fall asleep in the middle of the song. Yes, that's you, Abby. So this was actually the latest song that they did. And I love it because, it talks about us being sheep, and God being the shepherd. And for those of you who work with sheep, sheep are dumb. If you haven't, there's a beautiful video on YouTube where there's a sheep, it's in the ditch, and there's this guy's pulling it out. It's actually not just, it's a trench, just a really narrow trench, and the sheep is actually wedged in there. And they pull the sheep out, and the sheep is so happy to be out. It starts frolicking, frolic, then does this amazing bound headfirst back into the trench and just disappears into the trench. Look it up on YouTube. It is brilliant. But what I love is the picture of us being the sheep and how God is the good shepherd taking care of us. So take it away, kids.
10, 7 through 15. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate, whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd, does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep.
What I love about that was 2.5 months ago that they learned that, and they've had 2 practice sessions since then, but they mostly remember it. The little one is incredibly tired. We've been pushing her pretty hard the last week, so. But I love that line, and I lay down my life for the sheep, because that is love. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So go ahead and next slide. When we first got down to the DR, no, don't need that. We ended up finding, I do need that. We ended up finding a hole-in-the-wall smoothie guy. And we kind of made a tradition every, couple times a month we'd go there. And what we loved about him is that we'd go in and order, I'd order 5 different smoothies, and I made sure I ordered 5 different kinds because that made him make 5 different kinds. And he always made way too much. So he'd give you your 1 cup, and then he'd pass sample sizes around to everybody else. So if I played my cards right, I could order smoothies for everybody else in the family and none for me. And by the time I was done getting my family smoothies, I had like a gazillion other smoothies in my belly already. And then I will say that after a little while, I kind of got greedy, and I figured, I can either pay him $1 a smoothie, or I can just watch him and figure out what he does. So I spent a couple months just kind of observing, learning his secrets, and then I never went back. Yeah, I know I'm terrible. Actually, it's a good thing I did, because unfortunately he was bought out, and I'm sure there was some kind of family issues going on, because he's long gone. They ended up, whoever took over ended up building like a bigger smoothie thing, but he's no longer a part of it. But I got all his secrets before he left. So today I'm going to make you a mori soñando, which is one of the weirdest smoothies because it literally means dying dreaming. Don't try and figure that out. I've been trying for years. It doesn't work. But one of the reasons I'm doing it is because I learned a long time ago that, after I listened to hundreds of sermons in the course of my life, possibly over 1,000. I am a missionary kid after all. Some of them were repeats, because some of them was my dad, the same sermon 20 times in 20 different churches. On the plus side, if he'd ever conked out in the middle of the sermon, I probably could have finished it for him. But the thing I learned is that the sermons that I remember best were the ones that had an illustration involved. Actually, the first sermon illustration I remember was actually a high school student stood up, did a 10-minute talk on having a firm foundation. And I remember it was about a firm foundation because he came up with 2 little plates, foam plates with cups on them. And at the end of his talk, he lifted off the cups. In one case, you just had seeds just cascade all over the floor. And the other one, he had a little tiny tree that was actually, I guess, hot glued inside onto the plate. And just the idea of, when all of your supports are taken away, are you going to stand firm or are you going to end up all over the place? Kind of silly because seeds in a tree, it doesn't necessarily work for the adult brain, but for a little kid, I really remembered it. Then, actually, I will say I do recycle some of my sermons. When I'm down the DR and preaching, sometimes I'll have a good sermon. I'm like, people in the U.S. need to hear this one. So when it came time to come back here, it's just like, do I do the smoothie sermon or do I do the motorcycle sermon? No, not going to ship my motorcycle back just so I can drive it on stage. That was a good sermon, though. I'm sorry you guys missed it. But yeah, no, smoothies are a big part. For those of you who came and visited, I think I treated both teams to smoothies. And for some reasons, people seem to think that I know how to make them. I have no idea why. This one's actually not hard. It's only a couple of ingredients. And I hope I have enough. Last week when I did this at a different church, I didn't actually have one of these things. So I'm up like cutting them in half and like squeezing them desperately into here as fast as I can. I thought I pulled it off pretty well, but apparently I was told by multiple people that no, we all felt, we were all like, you were causing us great anxiety. But anyway, now I'm going to start causing you all great anxiety because I didn't get quite enough. Let's see, do I have any more stories I can tell while I'm doing this? Actually, yeah. But for whatever reason, we don't listen very well. Like for some of us, it's not just the words, it's the pictures in our minds. And so I've tried to do my best to bring the best ingredients that I have today. And I'm going to try and combine them in such a way as to make something that is good, refreshing, delicious. Actually, in all honesty, it's because I'm thirsty, and this is my excuse to make my own drink. Of course, I am going to be nice, because I might even share it with a couple of you. Oops. Sorry, indulge me. I'm just going to do one more. Anybody else stressed yet? Good. Sarah's like, you should have just squeezed all the limes ahead of time. I'm like, yes, I probably should have, but it's not so much fun. That should work. That's the problem with this recipe. I do it based off the ratios, and so if the ratio isn't right, I have no idea what I'm doing. And since you guys are the greatest, I'll use the greatest salt, that Himalayan pink salt. Still don't know why it's pink, but let's see. I hope that wasn't important. That's the other thing. If you say something dumb while you're doing an illustration, people just laugh. You guys are a great audience. A little bit of ice. Now here's the thing. Most of you won't remember next week what I talked about, but you will remember that I made a smoothie. Let's see. And now I'm going to unmic myself. Do a proper toast. So, on 3 to love. 1, 2, 3. How is it?
Missed out.
Come on, Terry, tell me, how did I do? How is it? I wish you could see the face right now. So when I did this last week, the average age of the people in church was definitely like 75, 80. And so, hold on. So, yeah, the average age was definitely 75 or 80. So I'm like, okay, I actually can't do this because I'm afraid I'll cause a heart attack. I may have missed something.
You think?
So I did this at CMA, and I had all the boys coming up. And they all grabbed their cups. It's like, okay, on 3, guys. And they all chug. And then it was just, ooh, ooh, ooh. It was great. And then my comment was, but guys, what's wrong? I mean, I used the best ice. I used fresh limes. I used good quality salt. I mean, I gave you the best that I had. Next slide. The problem is ogres are like onions and people are like limes. The best that we have is still sour. So, yes, I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, don't pay attention how much I'm putting in because with this, here, have a spoon. With this, you really do actually need an incredibly ungodly amount of sugar to make it palatable. Stir it up. It'll taste a little better, I think. Oh, you drank most of it. I mean, I'm proud of you, but... That's the problem. Next slide. We all have this concept of what love is or what love should be. The trouble is we try and we try and we try, but our love is never good enough. Hopefully I didn't give you guys too much sugar. But let's go to the next one. What is love? Love is patient. Love is kind. I'm only 6 words into this, and I've already disqualified my own love on so many levels. Because you can ask my kids, guys, am I patient? Okay, good. I have an honest Tommy. He's got violent head shake. No. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And I tell students, when you're taking a test, look out for the words always and never, because it's almost always wrong. Because those are like absolute statements. Always, no exceptions. Always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's the New International Version. Let me show you a more modern translation. Next one. Love is impatient. Love is self-servingly kind. It envies. It is loud and proud. It is self-seeking, easily angered, and writes pop songs when wronged. That's you, Taylor Swift. It delights in immorality and rejoices in lies. It always self-protects, only self-trusts, and always hopes and perseveres for self. That's the kind of love that we as human beings have. And I'm working with students. I've worked with troubled teens for 9 years now. And basically, almost every single one of them, this is their definition of love. They would never come out and say, absolutely, this is what it is, but this is how they act. impatient, self-servingly kind. You've definitely seen the self-servingly kind. We've all that way. We'll act differently around one person. Oh, yes, I will. Yes, I'm going to be all but, shut up, kids! It is loud and proud. That's actually one thing that we've had to deal with in the more recent history. This last year, we've had a number of students come who are struggling with their sexual identity. And the funny thing is that they're very loud and proud about it. They showed up, and right away they wanted to hang up their rainbow flags, and they wanted everybody to know that not only is, this is my birth name, but you can't call me that. You have to call me by my chosen name, and you have to refer to me as with this gender pronoun. And the funny thing is, it's like I look at you and you are one of the most confused, frustrated, anxious, depressed people, but you are holding on to this so tightly because you think it's going to make it all better, and you don't realize that by holding on to it so tightly, that's actually most of the root of your problems. By the way, the writes pop songs when wrong, that's kind of an inside joke, because one of my jobs at CMA is I'm in the classroom, I'm teaching them, but I'm also responsible for picking what music they can listen to. And so any songs they want to buy with their money, they have to vet through me. So every month, I hate payday. I hate payday because payday rolls around, all the students suddenly have cash, and all of a sudden 10 different lists of songs show up on my desk. And the students all know that about 80% of them are going to have a big red line drawn through them. They're smart enough now, they no longer ask for songs with swear words in them. But the girls especially ask for all kinds of love songs and breakup songs. And their view of love is just so broken. So let's take a look at some of the different forms of love. So next slide, and go ahead and hit the button again, 2 more times, I think. Perfect. Because that's the thing, the Greeks were a little smarter than we are. They realized that love is so multifaceted, you can't just have one word for it. Because I love Cheerios and I love my wife. Actually, that's frosted shredded wheat for me, but anyway. But they understood, you can't talk about a love for a spouse and a love for a food with the same word. So they had, depending on what you read, I've seen anywhere from 6 to, I think, 9 different words for love. These are the common ones. Philautia, self-love. This is one of our girls currently. She doesn't actually do any schoolwork in school. She sits down at her computer, turns it on, and looks at pictures of herself all day. And she doesn't just look at pictures of herself, she comments on them. Oh yeah, I look good in that one. Ooh, that one's ugly. Oh, but look at my hair there. Oh, look at my outfit. All day. It gets really old. Especially when it's like, are you wanting to work Walmart the rest of your life? Oh, don't worry, I'll figure it out. Sorry, the trials of a teacher. Her version of self-love is so skewed because the problem is one day she's loving herself and thinking she's the best thing since sliced bread. And the next day she's hating herself and self-harming. Because the problem is, it's not a healthy love. Because the problem is, if you don't actually start with the foundation of you are wonderfully and amazingly created by God, how can you truly have a healthy view of yourself? And actually, even there, it's kind of funny. There's a paradox. I am an amazing, beautiful creation of God. And yet at the same time, when I die, you break my body down, I'm going to fill a couple of 5-gallon jugs. And there'll be a little bit of carbon and a box of vitamins. And that's literally all I am. Water, carbon, vitamins. And yet God has taken those elements and arranged them in such a way that you have the wonderful, quirky me. With God out of the equation for any of these forms of love, we can't have a healthy form of any of these. Ludos, the playful, the flirtatious, which when done right is so beautiful, when done wrong can be incredibly hurtful. Philia, friendship, once again, a beautiful thing when done right, when understanding that like God actually wanted to walk with us in the garden, wanted to hold our hand, hear about our day, encourage us, challenge us. It's an amazing thing. I don't need to touch on Eros. I understand Pastor Conrad did that already. I heard it was a good couple of weeks. I'm sorry I missed it. Pragma, time-tested, loyal love. It's funny, most of the students I work with tell me, like, we can't see ourselves getting old. Like, we cannot see our lives past age 30, because, of course, 30 is ancient. I'm like, guys, I'm in my 30s. And they're like, yeah, you're ancient. Okay. The thing is, for them, they cannot imagine a relationship like two old people. I don't know why. They've watched Up a million times, but I mean, they just can't understand that idea of, wait a second, you mean it's possible to like love a spouse when Eros is not a part of the picture? Because that's the problem with our society. Most of our society has taught us that Eros is actually the base form of love. I mean, you actually stop and think about it. There's, hopefully this doesn't disturb some of you, but the fact that so many Bible scholars now believe that David and Jonathan was a homosexual relationship. They believe Ruth and Naomi was a homosexual relationship. It's because the culture has taught us that at the base, every beautiful form of relationship has to eventually come back to the Eros form of love. It's because we've forgotten that the ultimate form of love, the agape form, that selfless Christian love, that where you're willing to give and sacrifice nothing in return. And that's what God has done for us. That's what God continues to do for us. Because ultimately God remembers that we are just sheep. That we are hopeless people running around. I love talking, some of the talks I have with teenagers. Actually, I also loved watching Jerry have these talks with teenagers. Because these teenagers, it's amazing. They're, 14, 15, and they feel like they have their lives together. They truly believe that they know what's best for them. The girl I was talking about who stares at pictures of herself, she honestly believes that, like, if I were to get exactly what I want, if I could go home right now, live with this particular parent, and basically set up my life exactly like I want to, my life would be good. And of course, my comment is, that's what you were doing when you were sent here. That's what you were doing when you got admitted into like 3 different psych hospitals. Why do you think it's going to be different this time? Because I'm me, and I will make it different. That beautiful, innocent childhood belief that unfortunately some of us don't outgrow. That we actually believe that we have enough control over ourselves and over our own lives that we can make it work. And we can't. We can't. We are helpless sheep wandering around, joyfully bouncing along, and then making that beautiful dive headfirst into the pit. The interesting thing is, when we read the Bible, that's, to a certain extent, the church itself has done something of a discredit to us. Or actually, I should say Bible scholars have harmed us a little bit, not meaning to, but because we only use that one form of love, when they translate the Bible, it messes with us. So the next slide, please. Love is patient and kind. The only problem is we don't have a word that differentiates that from God's true agape love. Because in the Greek, this is clearly agape. Agape is patient and kind. It's not about friendship. It's not about, long-term, we've had long relationships, so we're going to love each other. It's definitely not about sex. This is sacrifice love. Agape is patient and kind. Agape does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Agape bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It is agape, and that's the form of love that we have forgotten. Next slide. Beloved, let us agape one another. Another case in the Bible where the word agape is used. For agape is from God, and whoever agapes has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not agape does not know God, because God is agape. And that's the problem. We can try and love. I can give the absolute best of myself. And for a while, I can make it work, especially for those of you who've had COVID and who can't actually taste anything. I mean, for a little while, it's cold, it's refreshing, it's creamy. But at some point, that sense of taste is going to kick in, and it's going to stop being good. And then for some of us who haven't had COVID yet, we know right away that, no, this is not good at all. We can do our absolute best over and over and over again, but we will always fail to love well. Proof of this, I can tell my wife that I love her, that I agape her 100 times in a day. I can sacrifice and strive and do everything in my power to make her feel loved. All it takes is one unkind word from me, and everything before that is forgotten. And I'm not trying to single out my wife, because let's face it, that's all of us. We can be loved and loved and loved, but then all it takes is that one time where we're not loved. And that's what we remember. And so, for all of us, I mean, on the one hand, for some of you, this is a challenge of like, you cannot do this on your own. For others of you, it's an encouragement of, you know what, you can't do this on your own, so don't beat yourself up when you fail. And for hopefully all of us, it's just a reminder of like, it's not about what we do. It's about what God has done for us, is doing for us, and hopefully is also doing through us. The church Sarah and I went to when we were in college had a beautiful sign over the door that as you were leaving the building, it said, "Warning, you are entering the mission field." And Pastor Conrad, we should like put that on the, no, you don't have to, but it's the idea of like, as you walk out of this building, as you leave this particular fellowship of believers, any new person, any new situation you come up, you're being a missionary. Now, whether you're being a good one, where you are showing God's love, reflecting God's love, or whether you're being a bad one, where you're being a bad testimony to God, that's up to you. But all that we do, and like Sarah has reminded me repeatedly the last couple of weeks, the only thing special about us, which I don't even know, she would never actually want me to use the word special. The different thing about us is we just happen to be in a different country. That's all. The same thing that we do, every one of you has the opportunity to do every day. And that's trying to show the world a different form of love. A slightly different way of looking at it. Let's pray. Dear Father, thank you for agapeing us so much. Thank you for, from before any of us were even born, you saw us and you loved us. You knit us together in our mother's wombs. And as we were being born, you already had a plan for each of us. You already knew where each of us would go. And you already knew who we were going to meet, whose lives we were going to touch. I pray that you would help each of us this week to, in our own lives, recognize your agape love. And to be able to see the contrast between your pure sacrificial love and the fake love of the world. And once we see that contrast, help us to help show that contrast to the rest of the world. Because it's so sad to watch people strive and fight and try their best to love. But because they aren't tapped into the source, they're just empty vessels, broken empty vessels that need your living water in them. Please fill us with your love. In Jesus' name, amen.